America's worst crime, Oklahoma's darkest hour. This plaque sits across from the Oklahoma City National Memorial. It serves as a tribute to those who responded to the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building on April 19, 1995. Firefighters, doctors, and of course those who lost a loved one as well. And now, over 20 years later, 4 of those stories are coming together for the very first time.
We've had an explosion. We need help. It's in the fire department.
We can come and find you, all right?
For me, I didn't just work that day and then went back to the fire station and life went on.
There is a glass sky bridge that connected the parking garage to the hospital.
I took my daughter there and I felt like she was safe and I felt like that I was doing the right thing. But I mean, she wasn't safe.
I was in the middle of the sky bridge when the bomb went off.
I looked at the clock and it was exactly 9:02 before everything went dark for me.
We got damage and injuries all up and down Broadway.
There was a lot of walking wounded.
Did every available incident you can get, fire everybody.
I think it was just the overall scene that something you just never picture in your mind.
146.
We don't want people to forget.
For Dr. Raymond King, it started off as a normal day here at OU Medical Center, which was then Presbyterian Hospital.
The shockwave shook the bridge, and I thought that a truck was driving underneath it and collided into the bridge. So I'm peering over, I don't see anything, and I look in front of me, in front of the buildings. Behind the buildings, you could see gray-white smoke billowing from there, and so I went on into the hospital, went to the 3rd floor where my clinic was. I turned on the TV in the waiting room, and they had a helicopter view of the Murrah Center.
Looks like it did significant damage.
As Dr. King recalls the horror and the shock, he says the images are hard to forget.
Dr. King, we need you. There's a traumatic head lack in radiology storage.
Radiology storage?
We didn't have anywhere else to put him.
What really struck me the most was how quiet it was. People were coming in like zombies, and there was glass everywhere. One gentleman came to me, he had a blood-soaked towel on his face, and apparently he was standing in the building across the street from the Murrah Center. He had his back to the window. The force of the explosion had essentially cut his scalp, lifted it up, and flipped it over his face.
Doc, I can still see.
Sir, I'm going to remove some debris from your scalp here.
He was forever changed. Combining his love for medicine and serving others, Dr. King applied for law school just a week after that, later opening his own firm.
The film is about, number one, the resiliency of the human spirit, but also how grace plays an important part in life.
And then there's Erin Allman Koch. Her daughter Bailey once played here where the Murrah Center daycare playground once stood. She was dropping Bailey off that horrific morning.
Even the day I went down there to look for Bailey, the policeman that was staying there, I was like, I'm looking for my daughter. She was in the daycare center.
Give us a chance to sort this out, okay?
And he was like, well, there wasn't a daycare center in there. And I'm like, yeah, there was.
Okay, right.
And I remember feeling like I was in a war zone.
But it wasn't until a photographer snapped this photo, viewed the next morning by most of the world, that Koch faced the ultimate test of strength. The image shows Captain Chris Fields carrying her lifeless daughter Bailey.
To me and my family, that picture is a representation of everybody that died there that day.
Today, Koch is a spokesperson for the Protecting People First Foundation. She brought Bailey's law to Congress. The law required parents receive more information about safety measures and how many government agencies are inside the building.
I was like, there were so many people, and we invite people into federal buildings and in places like that, and we're not protecting them like we should.
And just like Koch, Chris Fields was forever changed that day. April 19th was just the beginning in a series of personal trials and a test of faith. This scene from Beauty for Ashes shows the hardships Chris Fields and his wife battled following the bombing and how it affected their marriage.
I have been patient. I have been understanding. I have given you your space when I thought you needed it.
Cheryl,
yes, Chris,
just stop! Just
stop
it! I am not a hero! I did not save anybody!
We focus so much on the physical aspect of the job, being in shape physically and all that, but I think the mental aspect of the job gets overlooked sometimes, and the toll it takes on first responders and their families.
Fields now speaks to first responders about post-traumatic stress disorder and how to cope with the mental toll their job can take.
I still have friends that are retired and still tell me this day that, they still have nightmares about the bombing.
Dana Bradley was here too. She spotted the Ryder truck, as well as the man later held responsible for the first domestic terrorist attack on U.S. soil.
This is something that happened in my life that will never go away in my mind.
She was a victim trapped beneath the rubble. Doctors had to amputate her leg right then and there. Bradley's mother and children, who were with her that day, died in the attack.
Losing my kids and my mother, I was 19 when that happened.
Bradley actually saw Timothy McVeigh moments before the bombing, getting out of the Ryder truck. 2 years after the attack, she testified against him in a Denver courtroom.
I was speaking for every bombing victim that couldn't speak out. The anger, the outrage about how it was presented in court, how he could just sit there and he could just smile and smirk and think it's funny. No, it wasn't funny and it's not cute.
4 Oklahomans broken by the pain, but learning how to deal with tragedy. The movie featuring their stories centers around Isaiah 61:3, because each of them make beauty from the ashes.
It doesn't sensationalize at all anything about the bombing. This is not about conspiracy theories. It's not about anything other than forgiveness and grace, and the setting just happens to be the Oklahoma City bombing.
In downtown Oklahoma City, Jessica Bruno, Oklahoma's News 4.